My girlfriend gave me an ultimatum, proposed to me at the family Christmas party, or we're done. I found out it was a ploy to humiliate me when she said no. I agreed. At the party, I got down on one knee, pulled out a ring box, and asked her sister to be my realtor because I was moving out and needed a new place. The ultimatum came on a Tuesday night. It landed with all the subtlety of a brick through a window, shattering the comfortable quiet of our evening. My girlfriend of 2 years, Laura, turned off the television, stood in front of me, and crossed her arms. Her expression was one I had never seen before. It was hard, determined, and cold. "We need to talk," she said. I sat up, concerned. "Okay, what's wrong?" "This," she said, gesturing between the two of us. "It's not moving forward. My friends are getting engaged, married. My parents keep asking. I'm 28, Alex. I'm not getting any younger." I had always been honest with her about my timeline. I wanted to be sure. Marriage is a serious commitment, and while I loved her, there were small things that gave me pause. Her obsession with appearances, her constant need for social media validation, the way she sometimes spoke about her friends behind their backs. I thought these were things we could work through, that they were signs of immaturity, not fundamental character flaws. I was wrong. "Laura, we've talked about this," I said gently. "I'm just not ready to take that step right this second. Maybe in another year." "No," she cut me off. "Not in another year. Now. My family's big Christmas Eve party is in 2 weeks. I want you to propose to me there, in front of everyone. A grand gesture. If you can't do that, then we're done. I'll pack my bags the day after Christmas." I was stunned. A proposal ultimatum is bad enough, but a public proposal ultimatum? At her family's party? It felt less like a romantic milestone and more like a hostage negotiation. She wanted a spectacle. The house we were living in was mine. I bought it years before I met her. The finances were largely separate, but she lived a comfortable life with me. The idea of her packing her bags should have terrified me. Instead, it just felt transactional. I tried to reason with her, to explain how a forced proposal was the opposite of what either of us should want. But she wouldn't budge. It was the party, or it was over. She went to bed angry, leaving me on the couch with my head spinning. I felt cornered, confused, and deeply hurt. The discovery of the truth happened 3 days later, and it came from the most unlikely source, her older sister, Sarah. Sarah was the complete opposite of Laura. She was quiet, pragmatic, and had a low tolerance for drama. She worked as a real estate agent and had built her business through sheer hard work, a concept that seemed foreign to Laura. Sarah and I had always gotten along well, sharing a silent understanding of her sister's more difficult qualities. She asked me to meet her for coffee, her voice tense over the phone. When I got there, she looked like she hadn't slept. She told me she had wrestled with whether to say anything, but her conscience won. The night before, she had been at her parents' house and had overheard Laura in her old bedroom, talking loudly on the phone with her best friend Megan. The door was ajar, and Sarah heard every venomous word. Laura was laughing, giggling actually. She was bragging to Megan about the ultimatum. She said she was tired of waiting for me to get my act together, and that she had found someone else, a guy she'd been seeing casually for a month. Her plan was simple and cruel. She wanted the public proposal so she could say no. She wanted to humiliate me in front of her entire family, to paint me as the pathetic, clingy boyfriend she was forced to reject. It would be her grand exit, the dramatic story she could tell for years, casting herself as the desirable woman who had to break a poor man's heart. Megan was apparently squealing with delight on the other end of the phone, promising to have her camera ready to capture the moment. Sarah sat there, stirring her coffee, her expression pained. "She wants to ruin you, Alex. Just for a story." I couldn't let that happen. As I listened, something in me shifted. The hurt didn't just vanish, it crystallized. It turned from a painful, heavy weight into a sharp, cold diamond. The confusion evaporated, replaced by absolute clarity. I saw Laura for exactly who she was, not who I hoped she was. The ultimatum wasn't an act of desperation. It was a trap. I thanked Sarah profusely. I told her I owed her more than I could say. A strange calm settled over me. Laura wanted a spectacle. She wanted a grand gesture at her family's Christmas party. Fine. I would give her one she would never forget. That evening, I went home and found Laura in the kitchen. I put on the best performance of my life. I took her hands, looked her in the eyes, and told her I had been a fool. I told her she was right, that life is short, and that I couldn't imagine it without her. "I'll do it," I said, my voice full of fake emotion. "I'll propose at the party. You deserve that." Her face lit up with a triumphant, predatory smile that she tried to disguise as joy. It was the smile of a hunter who had just watched its prey walk confidently into a snare. "Oh, Alex, I knew you'd see it my way," she chirped, hugging me. It felt like being embraced by a snake. The game was on. Update 1. The 2 weeks leading up to Christmas Eve were surreal. Laura was insufferably smug. She floated around the house, making not-so-subtle comments about ring styles and dropping hints about the big surprise to her friends on the phone. All the while, I played the part of the devoted, slightly nervous fiancé-to-be. Behind the scenes, I was a whirlwind of activity. My plan was simple, but it required precision. I spent hours online, securing a new apartment for myself, signing the lease, and arranging for movers. I systematically went through the house, separating my belongings from hers. I packed my essential personal items, clothes, documents, family heirlooms, into boxes and quietly moved them to a small temporary storage unit. I also met with Sarah again. I told her my plan, every detail. I asked her if she would be willing to play a part in it. There was a moment of hesitation, not because she was on Laura's side, but because she was absorbing the sheer audacity of it. Then a slow smile spread across her face. "Consider me on your team," she said. "She deserves this." Christmas Eve arrived. The party at her parents' house was exactly as Laura had envisioned. The house was lavishly decorated, music was playing, and at least 50 family members and friends were milling about, drinking eggnog and laughing. Laura was in her element, wearing a glittering red dress and holding court. Every time she caught my eye, she would tap her finger on her cheek and point to the floor, a silent, mocking reminder of my impending duty. Her friend, Megan, followed her around like a lady in waiting, phone held at the ready. Around 9 o'clock, after most people had eaten, Laura gave me a sharp, meaningful nod. Showtime. My heart wasn't pounding with nervousness, but with a cold, steady beat of adrenaline. I walked to the center of the living room, near the towering Christmas tree, and clinked a glass for attention. The room fell silent. Every eye was on me. Laura moved to stand near me, her face a perfect mask of feigned, happy anticipation. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice clear and strong. "Thank you all for welcoming me into your home tonight. This has been a very important year for me, a year of clarity. I've been doing a lot of thinking about my future, about what I want and what I need, and I've finally made a big decision to secure my own happiness and well-being." Out of the corner of my eye, I could see Megan raise her phone to start recording. Laura took a small, deliberate step forward, ready for her close-up. I turned to face her, but then I let my gaze slide past her, directly to her sister, Sarah, who was standing near the fireplace. "And to make this happen," I continued, "I'm going to need some professional help." I reached into my jacket pocket. The entire room held its breath. Laura's smug smile was fixed in place. I got down on one knee, just as she demanded. I pulled out the small black velvet box. Laura audibly gasped, a perfect piece of theater for the audience. I opened the box, but inside there wasn't a diamond ring. Inside, nestled on the velvet, was a shiny, newly cut house key. I looked directly at Sarah. "Sarah," I said, my voice ringing through the silent room. "I know this is highly unconventional, but I was hoping you would do me the honor of being my realtor. I've decided to sell my house, and I need to find a new place to live, immediately. I'm moving out." For a full 5 seconds, there was absolute, stunned silence. You could have heard a pine needle drop from the tree. The collective brain of the party was trying to process what had just happened. Laura's face went through a rapid series of emotions. Confusion, then dawning comprehension, then white-hot fury. The smug mask shattered, revealing the ugly reality beneath. Megan's phone was still recording, but her jaw was hanging open. Sarah, ever the professional, stepped forward. She smiled warmly at me, ignoring her sister completely. "Alex," she said, her voice steady, "I would be delighted to represent you. Let's find you a great new home and get that house sold." The silence broke. A wave of murmurs and gasps swept through the room. Laura's father looked utterly bewildered. Her mother looked horrified. Laura let out a sound somewhere between a choke and a scream. "What are you doing?" she hissed at me, her voice trembling with rage. I stood up calmly, pocketing the box with the key. "I'm securing my future, just like I said, a future that doesn't include you." I looked around the room. "My apologies for the drama, everyone. I'll see myself out." And with that, I turned and walked out the front door, leaving a crater of chaos and humiliation behind me. It wasn't the Christmas party anyone expected, but for me, it was the start of a much happier new year. Update 2. The immediate aftermath of the party was exactly the storm of fury I had anticipated. My phone started blowing up before I even got to the hotel I had booked for myself. Dozens of missed calls from Laura. A string of texts that started with pure rage and devolved into threats and insults. I read the first few, then I blocked her number. I had nothing left to say to her. The next wave came from her parents. Her mother, Carol, called me the next day. She didn't yell. She used that disappointed, guilt-inducing tone that I'm sure had always worked on her daughters. "Alex, I am just so disappointed in you," she began. "To humiliate Laura like that in our home, in front of our family, it was a cruel, childish stunt." I refused to take the bait. "Carol," I said, my voice calm and firm. "Did Laura tell you why I did that? Did she tell you about her plan to say no to my proposal just to embarrass me? Did she mention that her friend Megan was waiting to film my rejection?" There was a pause on the other end. "She was upset," Carol stammered. "She might have said some things she didn't mean." "She meant every word," I replied, "and she was bragging about it to her friend." I was given an ultimatum that was actually a trap. I chose not to be a victim. I chose to remove myself from the situation. My actions at the party were a direct response to her planned cruelty. "I'm sorry it happened in your home, but I will not apologize for defending myself." She had no answer to that. She mumbled something about me being heartless and hung up. The next few weeks were about logistics. True to her word, Sarah was a phenomenal realtor. She came over to the house, my house, and we did a walkthrough. We signed the paperwork to list it. Seeing her work, so focused and professional, I knew I had made the right choice in an ally. Dealing with Laura's belongings was the next hurdle. She had left a significant amount of stuff at the house. I had no intention of speaking with her, so I had Sarah send a formal email. It stated that Laura had until the end of the month, a period of about 3 weeks, to arrange for a time to professionally move all of her possessions out of the house. The email specified that she would not be given a key and that either I or a representative would be present during the move. The response was an email not from Laura, but from a lawyer. It was a blustering, threatening letter demanding that I cease all efforts to sell the house. It claimed Laura had a financial interest in the property due to her significant contributions to the household and her emotional investment in the relationship. It also demanded a payment of $50,000 for emotional distress and public humiliation. I laughed when I read it. Sarah, who I forwarded it to, laughed even harder. My name was the only one on the deed and the mortgage purchased long before Laura was in the picture. She had paid a small, inconsistent amount towards groceries and utilities, nothing more. Her emotional investment had been planning my public takedown. On Sarah's advice, I hired a lawyer she recommended. He drafted a response that was a masterpiece of legal destruction. It pointed out that Laura had no legal claim to the property whatsoever. It included a detailed breakdown of the minimal financial contributions she had made versus the cost of living she had enjoyed. It flatly refused any payment for emotional distress, stating that any humiliation she suffered was a direct result of her own documented scheme. The letter concluded by stating that if she did not remove her belongings by the deadline, they would be considered abandoned and disposed of, and she would be billed for the cost of removal. The best part, though, was the social media situation. Laura and Megan had tried to spin their narrative online. They posted tearful, vague statuses about betrayal and psychopaths. But they made a critical error. They forgot how many witnesses there were. The story of what really happened at the party spread like wildfire through their social circles. The story of the house key in the ring box was just too specific and too brilliant to be fake. People started asking questions. Worse for them, someone, I still don't know who, leaked the video Megan had been filming. The clip of Laura's face morphing from smug triumph to slack-jawed horror was apparently making the rounds. Her victim narrative crumbled to dust. She was exposed not as the heartbroken party, but as the malicious planner of a failed plot. Final update. It has now been 4 months since that Christmas Eve. The dust has completely settled, and my life has been reshaped in the best way possible. Laura's legal threats evaporated after her lawyer received our response. I imagine he advised her that she had zero chance of winning and would likely end up paying my legal fees if she pursued it. A week before the deadline, she and her mother came to the house with a moving truck. As stipulated, I was present, but I stayed in the kitchen and didn't say a single word to either of them. The silence was thick with tension. They worked quickly, grabbing her things with barely concealed fury. The last thing her mother said as she walked out the door was, "I hope you're happy." I just nodded. I was. The house sold less than a month after it was listed. Thanks to Sarah's expertise, we got multiple offers and it sold for well over the asking price. The closing was smooth and clean. When it was all done, I wrote Sarah a commission check that included a significant bonus. She tried to refuse it, but I insisted. "You didn't just sell my house," I told her. "You had my back when it mattered. That's worth more than any commission." Our strange alliance has turned into a genuine friendship. It turns out she's the one in the family I was actually meant to be close to. As for Laura, her life has reportedly gone into a downward spiral. The public humiliation was more damaging than she could have ever imagined. She lost a huge amount of credibility with her friends and family. The other guy, the one she was planning her grand new life with, apparently wanted nothing to do with her once the drama erupted and it became clear there was no financial benefit in being with her. She was forced to move back into her parents' house. From what I hear through Sarah, who hears it from her long-suffering father, she is miserable, bitter, and blames everyone but herself for her situation. She is a queen in a castle of her own consequences. And me? I took the profits from the sale of the house and bought a fantastic new condo downtown, a place that is entirely mine, filled with only my things, my memories. The feeling of freedom is indescribable. There are no more arguments about appearances, no more pressure to live a life for social media, no more ultimatums. There is just peace. Looking back, the ultimatum Laura gave me was the greatest gift she could have ever offered. It was the catalyst that exposed the truth of her character and forced me to act. My revenge wasn't about hurting her, it was about saving myself. It was about refusing to be a pawn in her cruel game. I didn't just dodge a bullet. I disarmed the person holding the gun and walked away without a scratch. The fact that she ended up humiliated by her own plot was simply a satisfying form of justice. My life is better, quieter, and more authentic than it has ever been. And that is a victory no one can take away from me. It happened on a Tuesday. I was in my home office wrapping up some work when a notification popped up on our shared tablet. It was a text message, synced from my fiancée Claire's phone. We rarely used the tablet, it mostly just sat on the charger, but for some reason I glanced at it. The message was from her mom. Her mom, "Any luck getting him to talk about the loans?" And then a new message from Claire. A reply that just popped up right as I was looking. "Not yet, he's avoiding it. But don't worry, I'll get him to agree before the wedding. Once he pays them off, I'm gone." I just stared at it. The words didn't seem real. It was like my brain just refused to process them. I run my own architecture firm. My entire life is about details, about how things fit together. And this one sentence just took a sledgehammer to the entire structure of my life. Gone. Once he pays them off. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a plan. A cold, simple, brutal plan. My first thought was just white-hot rage. I wanted to pick up the tablet and throw it through the wall. I wanted to walk into the living room where I could hear her laughing at some show on TV and just unleash hell. But then, something else took over. A weird, icy calm. This wasn't something you scream about. Screaming is what you do when you're trying to save something. This thing was already dead. All that was left was the demolition. I took out my phone and took a picture of the tablet screen. I emailed it to myself. Then I went back to the message thread on the tablet and just kept scrolling up. She'd been careless, so sure that her quiet, predictable fiancé would never think to look. It was all there, going back months. A carefully orchestrated plot, masterminded by her mother, to get me to pay off her $150,000 in student loan debt from her art history degree. There were texts from her mom coaching her on what to say, how to act. Don't be aggressive about it. Make it about our future. Tell him you can't feel settled until you're both debt-free as a team. Cry a little if you have to. He'll feel guilty. And Claire's replies, he's so focused on the wedding planning, it's the perfect distraction. I almost feel bad sometimes. He's a good guy. Followed by her mom's reply, don't feel bad. Feel smart. This is for your future, not his. The one that really got me was about what came after. But what do I do after? It'll be obvious if I leave right away. You stay for a year, make it look good. Then you say you're unhappy, you've grown apart. By then, the money is gone, the loans are paid, you walk away free and clear. It's a perfect plan. A perfect plan. For 2 years, I thought we were building a life. She thought she was executing a heist. I closed the message app. I stood up and walked to the kitchen. My hand was perfectly steady as I poured a glass of water. She was still on the couch. Hey, babe, she said, not looking up from the TV. You okay? You're quiet. Just thinking about a project, I said. My voice sounded normal. It was the calmest I had ever felt. She thought she was playing chess, and that I didn't even know there was a board. She had no idea I had just seen the whole game, every move she was planning to make. And I was about to flip the table over. Update 1. The 2 weeks that followed were the strangest of my life. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Confrontation would lead to denial, fake tears, and promises to change. It would be messy. I don't do messy. I do clean, precise, and final. Thank you for all the comments on my first post. A lot of you said to play the long game, but I couldn't. Every moment I was in the same house as her felt like a lie. My plan had to be fast and brutal. First, I documented everything, every text message. I also started looking into our finances. She lived in my house, I paid the mortgage and all the utilities. She drove a car that was in my name. I paid for her insurance, her gas, our vacations, our dinners out. Her small paycheck from the art gallery was her fun money. My income was our life money. I had been supporting a parasite, and she was planning to kill the host after one last big meal. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense guy named Frank, confirmed my next steps. She has no legal claim to your house or your assets as a girlfriend. Your only vulnerability is if you voluntarily give her a large sum of money. The entire plan hinges on you agreeing to pay those loans. So, you're going to agree. That was the key. I had to let her think she was winning. I had to walk her right up to the finish line, let her taste the victory, and then pull the rug out from under her so hard she wouldn't know what hit her. So I started playing the part. A few days after I found the texts, I brought it up. We were making dinner. I sighed dramatically and said, you know, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about your loans, about us starting our life as a team. She turned to me, her eyes wide with fake hope. You have? Yeah, I said. And I don't want that hanging over us. It's my wedding gift to you. I'm gonna pay them off. She burst into tears. It was an Oscar-worthy performance. She threw her arms around me, sobbing about how I was the most generous, wonderful man alive. She immediately called her mom to tell her the news. I could hear her mother's triumphant squeals through the phone. The fish had taken the bait. There's just one thing, I added, after she hung up. I don't want to just wire the money. This is a huge moment for us. I want to do it properly. I want to have a dinner, a celebration with our parents. I'll have my bank draw up a cashier's check for the full amount, and I'll present it to you that night in front of our families, a real symbol of us starting our new life together. She was ecstatic. A public ceremony of her victory? It was more than she could have dreamed of. She thought I was being romantic. I was just setting the stage. The dinner was last night. A private room in the best restaurant in town. Claire and her parents were on one side of the table. My parents were on the other. Claire was glowing, absolutely radiant. Her mom looked like a cat that had just swallowed a canary. Her dad, a decent guy who I now realize was completely clueless, just looked happy for his daughter. We went through the motions, small talk, wine, appetizers. Claire and her mom kept exchanging little knowing smiles. My parents were talking about how excited they were for the wedding. Then, after the main course, I stood up. I had a single envelope in my hand. As you all know, I began, I've asked you here for a special reason. Claire and I are about to start a life together, and I wanted to begin that life on the right foot. Claire, your student loan debt has been a huge burden on you, and because I love you, I want to lift that burden. So, as my wedding gift to you, I am paying off your entire student loan debt. My parents smiled, impressed by the gesture. Claire's dad clapped me on the shoulder. Claire and her mom were practically vibrating with joy. I opened the envelope, but I didn't pull out a check. I pulled out a single piece of paper. It was a printed, blown-up screenshot of the text message she had sent me 2 weeks ago. I laid it on the center of the table for everyone to see. Don't worry, once he pays off my student loans, I'll leave. The silence that fell over that room was the loudest thing I have ever heard. Claire's face went from radiant joy to absolute bone-white horror in a split second. Her mother looked like she had been slapped. My parents stared at the paper, then at Claire, their faces a mask of confusion and disgust. Her father read the text and the color drained from his face. He just looked at his daughter, then his wife, and the dawning realization was painful to watch. This was never a wedding, I said, my voice cold and even. It was a con. A very well-planned con, I'll admit. Your mother should be proud. I then pulled out a second set of papers. They were copies of the text conversations between Claire and her mom, the ones where they planned the whole scheme. I handed a set to my parents and a set to her father. I believe these will answer any questions you might have, I said. Claire started sobbing, a pathetic, gasping sound. Mark, no, it's not what it looks like. I can explain. There's nothing to explain, I said, cutting her off. You explained it all perfectly in your texts. The wedding is off. We are over. I looked at her dad. I'm sorry you had to find out like this. You raised a daughter, but your wife raised a con artist. Then I stood up. Mom, Dad, let's go. We walked out of that restaurant, leaving them to sit in the wreckage. The fallout began before I even got to my car. A hysterical voicemail from Claire, screaming and crying. Then a text. You have ruined my life. My reply was simple. No, I just stopped paying for it. I got home and all her stuff was already gone. I'd had movers pack it up and deliver it to her parents' house while we were at dinner. The locks were changed. The digital T-code was erased. For the past 24 hours, my phone has been a war zone. I finally just blocked her number and her mom's. But I got one last desperate voicemail from a blocked number this morning. It was her. Mark, please, she sobbed. You can't do this. I made a mistake, a horrible mistake. My mom, she pushed me. Please, I'm going to go to your parents' house. I'm going to talk to them. They love me. They'll make you listen. She thinks this is a negotiation. She thinks she can deploy her fake tears and manipulate my parents. She has no idea who my father is. She has no idea what happens when you try to con a family of architects. She's about to try and reason with the man who taught me how to spot a fatal flaw from a mile away. Hey everyone, it's Mark, the OP from the story about the student loan scheme. First of all, the response to my first post was insane. I read hundreds of your comments, and it felt good knowing I wasn't crazy for how I handled things. A lot of you were asking for an update, especially about what would happen when my ex-fiancée, Claire, tried to confront my parents. Well, she did it, and the result was more spectacular than I could have ever planned. So, here's the final chapter. After the dinner where I exposed everything, I went completely dark. I blocked Claire and her mom on everything. The silence was incredible. My parents, on the other hand, were getting the full court press. My mom told me Claire had left her a dozen tearful, rambling voicemails, spinning a tale about how it was all a huge misunderstanding and how her mother had pressured her into a stupid joke. My mom wasn't buying a word of it. I had already warned them about Claire's final, desperate threat from her last voicemail, that she was going to show up at their house. My dad's only response was a calm, "Let her come." It happened on Saturday. I was at my own place, trying to enjoy a quiet weekend, when my dad called me. His voice was calm, but I could hear a steel edge to it that I knew well. "Mark," he said, "the demolition crew has arrived." He put the phone on speaker and set it down on the table in his study, right next to the front door. I was about to have a front row seat. I heard the doorbell ring. I heard my mom open the door. Her voice was polite but frosty. "Claire? We weren't expecting you." Then I heard Claire, her voice thick with fake tears. "I am so sorry to bother you. I had to talk to you. I had to explain. Mark won't speak to me, and he's not thinking clearly. He's throwing everything away over a misunderstanding." "It's not a misunderstanding when it's written in black and white, Claire," a deep voice cut in. That was my dad. He had stepped into the entryway. "My son showed us your texts, all of them." Claire started sobbing harder. "But that wasn't me. That was my mother. She's the one who is obsessed with my loans. She put all those ideas in my head. I love Mark. I would never hurt him. You know me. You know I love him." My dad let her finish. The silence stretched for a few seconds. Then he said, "I am an architect, Claire. My son is an architect. We build things, buildings, relationships, families. And the first rule of building anything that is meant to last is that you must have a solid foundation. You don't build on sand, you don't build on lies, and you certainly don't build on a blueprint of deceit and fraud." "It wasn't fraud," she wailed. "It was a mistake." "Was it a mistake when you texted your mother that you'd stay for a year to make it look good before leaving?" my dad asked, his voice sharp as glass. "Was it a mistake when you wrote that once you were debt-free, you would have options and wouldn't be trapped anymore? That doesn't sound like a mistake. That sounds like a meticulously designed plan. The kind of plan an architect can appreciate from a technical standpoint. Morally, however, it is repugnant." He wasn't yelling. He was dissecting her, piece by piece with surgical precision. "You didn't come here to explain," my dad continued. "You came here to execute the next phase of your plan. You failed to manipulate my son, so now you are attempting to manipulate his parents. You see us as another structural weakness you can exploit, but you are mistaken. This family is not a house of cards." Just as Claire was about to launch into another round of excuses, I heard a car pull up outside. Then another knock at the door. My mom opened it again. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she muttered. It was Claire's parents. Her father, John, was in the lead, looking flustered. Her mother, Susan, was right behind him, her face a mask of practiced concern. "We are so sorry to be here like this," John began, trying to sound reasonable. "Our daughter is a wreck, as you can imagine. This has all been a terrible, terrible misunderstanding. I think Mark may have overreacted." My dad cut him off. "Overreacted? John, I saw the texts. Your wife coached your daughter, step by step, on how to commit financial fraud against my son. Did you know about this?" John puffed up his chest, trying to look indignant. "Of course not. I'm as shocked as you are. Susan was just trying to help Claire with her financial anxiety. Her methods were misguided, but her heart was in the right place. I had to give it to him. He was a good actor. At the restaurant, I had almost felt sorry for him. I had thought he was a clueless victim in his wife's and daughter's scheme. But my father has been designing and negotiating contracts for 40 years. He can spot a lie from a mile away. "So you're telling me," my dad said slowly, "that your wife and daughter have been planning this for over 6 months, and you, her husband and father, had absolutely no idea? You live in the same house, you share finances, and you never once had a single conversation about a plan to extract $150,000 from my son?" "I am a busy man," John said dismissively. "I don't get involved in their day-to-day drama." "I see," my dad said. Then he delivered the final blow. "That's interesting, because I took the liberty of having a conversation with my son's lawyer this morning. He was quite interested in the legal definition of conspiracy to commit fraud. It's a fascinating subject. He mentioned that in cases like this, investigators will often look at a family's complete financial records, phone records, bank statements, everything, to determine who was aware of the plan. It's amazing what a forensic accountant can uncover. The threat wasn't overt, but it was crystal clear. And it worked. John's face went white. Susan let out a little gasp. "Now, this is an overreach," John stammered, his composure finally cracking. "There is no need to involve lawyers." "Isn't there?" my dad countered. "Your daughter tried to steal a sum of money that would represent a down payment on a house. That's not a misunderstanding. That is grand larceny in a pretty dress. And you, by your own admission, either knew and did nothing, which makes you complicit, or you were so willfully ignorant of the scheme being hatched under your own roof that it amounts to gross negligence. Either way, you have no moral high ground here. He then turned his attention back to Claire. You came to this house looking for an ally. You will not find one here. You targeted my son because you thought his kindness was a weakness. You saw his stability as an opportunity. You are a predator, and you are no longer welcome in this family or in this house. The engagement is over. The relationship is over. You will have no further contact with my son. If you attempt to contact him or us again, we will pursue a restraining order. Is that clear? Claire just stood there, speechless, her fake tears dried up, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated shock. She had been so certain she could manipulate them. She had walked into what she thought was a negotiation and found herself in a demolition. Now, my dad said, his voice dropping to a final, dismissive tone, I suggest you and your family leave. You have a great deal to discuss, I imagine. I heard the door close. My dad picked up the phone. Are you still there, Mark? I'm here, I said. My voice was a little shaky. It's done, he said. The site is clear. The aftermath was even more satisfying. John, terrified that my dad would actually follow through and that his own shady finances might come to light, completely imploded. He and Susan had a massive fight right there in my parents' driveway. He blamed her for the plan failing. She blamed him for not being a better actor. Claire was left with nothing. Her parents are apparently on the verge of divorce, their own marriage built on a foundation just as rotten as the one she tried to build with me. Her father has cut her off financially, furious at the public humiliation and the risk she exposed him to. So Claire is now back at home, in a house at war with itself, with no fiancé, no job that can cover her bills, and $150,000 of student loan debt that is still and will forever be entirely hers. She didn't just lose a fiancé, she lost her entire support system. She gambled everything on a perfect plan, and she lost it all. The demolition is complete. My girlfriend invited her ex to my birthday dinner as a friend. When he showed up with flowers for her, she said, "It's sweet that you still remember what I like." I blew out my candles, made a wish, and left. My wish came true. 3 days later, she was calling me frantically to undo what I did. I've been sitting on this story for a couple months, partly because I was too busy enjoying the fallout, and partly because I wanted to see how everything played out. It's a good one. For context, I, 29M, had been dating Eliza, 27F, for almost 2 years. We met through a mutual friend at a craft brewery opening, hit it off immediately, and things progressed pretty smoothly from there. She's smart, ambitious, works in marketing for a tech company. I run a physical security consultancy specializing in access control systems and surveillance for businesses and high-end homes. We've been growing steadily over the past 5 years. Eliza and I weren't living together, but we spent most nights at one of our places. I have my own house on the outskirts of the city that I bought 4 years ago after landing several corporate clients. She has a downtown apartment that's convenient for work. Now about the ex. His name is Kyle. I'd heard about him from day one. They dated for 3 years before breaking up about a year before Eliza and I met. According to her, they just wanted different things. He wanted to settle down, she wasn't ready. Standard breakup stuff. What wasn't standard was how often his name came up. Kyle's new job, Kyle's vacation photos, Kyle's family drama. I never made a big deal out of it. I'm not the jealous type, and I figured some people just stay friends with their exes. Not my style, but whatever. About 6 months into our relationship, Eliza mentioned that her company needed to upgrade their security system. Since that's my business, I offered to help as a professional courtesy. She introduced me to her boss, we worked out a service contract, and I installed their system. As the relationship progressed, Eliza began helping with some marketing materials for my company. Nothing formal, just occasional advice and feedback, since that's her expertise. Then came my birthday. Eliza insisted on organizing everything. Dinner reservation at this upscale place I'd mentioned wanting to try, inviting a small group of our closest friends. I was touched by her effort and looking forward to a good night. The day before, she casually mentioned, "Oh, by the way, I invited Kyle too." I looked up from my laptop. "Kyle, your ex?" "Yeah, is that okay? He's just a friend now and he gets along with most of the people who'll be there. Something felt off, but I didn't want to come across as insecure. Sure, whatever, it's just dinner. The night arrives. We're at the restaurant, a table for 8. My best friend Tom and his wife, my business partner Jared, 2 other couples we hang out with regularly, Eliza and me. We're having drinks, waiting on the last guest. Kyle. He shows up 20 minutes late, making a grand entrance, and he's carrying a bouquet of purple dahlias. I immediately glance at Eliza, who's beaming. Kyle hands her the flowers, completely ignoring me. "These are for you," he says. "Happy spring." It's October. Eliza accepts them, her face lighting up. "Purple dahlias. It's sweet that you still remember what I like." The table goes silent. Everyone's looking from Kyle to Eliza to me. Tom's wife gives me a sympathetic grimace. Jared looks like he wants to say something, but thinks better of it. Kyle finally acknowledges me with a nod. "Happy birthday, man." No flowers for the birthday boy, apparently. Dinner proceeds, and it's like I'm invisible. Kyle dominates the conversation, sharing inside jokes with Eliza that no one else gets. He's positioned himself directly across from her, making eye contact constantly. I'm at the head of the table, supposedly the guest of honor, but might as well be a ghost. The waiter brings out a cake with candles. Everyone sings. Eliza puts her arm around me, the first time she's really paid attention to me all evening. I stare at the flames. The situation's suddenly crystal clear. "Make a wish," someone says. I look at Eliza, then at Kyle, then back at the candles. I wish for clarity, for self-respect, for what needs to happen next. I blow out the candles, stand up, toss my napkin on the table, and calmly say, "Thanks for coming, everyone. I need some air." Eliza looks confused. "You're leaving? We haven't even cut the cake." "I've lost my appetite," I reply. "Kyle can have my slice. Seems like he's taking everything else of mine tonight anyway." I walk out, ignoring Eliza calling my name. Outside, I take a deep breath. No anger, just resolution. I call an Uber and head home. My phone blows up with texts from Eliza. "Where did you go? You're being ridiculous. It's your birthday dinner. Kyle is just a friend. Come back and we can talk about this." I reply with just one message. "I'm not coming back. Not tonight, not ever. We're done." She calls repeatedly. I don't answer. Instead, I go home and do something I should have done long ago. I log into my home security system. See, part of my business involves installing high-end security systems. My own house has one of our premium packages. Cameras at entry points, smart locks, the works. All accessible via secure app. During installation, I'd explain the system to Eliza, showing her where the outdoor cameras were positioned for her safety when she stayed over. The system keeps detailed logs, and I regularly check them as both professional practice and personal security. I hadn't noticed anything unusual until now, but I'd also never had reason to suspect anything. I checked the footage from the past few months, focusing on days I was traveling for work. And there it is. A pattern emerges. A familiar car in my driveway. Kyle, using the access code to enter my house. Eliza, greeting him at the door in ways you definitely don't greet just a friend. I watch enough to confirm what I already knew, then stop. I don't need the details. I just needed proof. Next, I check access logs for my smart locks. Eliza has an authorized code. I notice another code being used on days when I was away. 5953. Looking at the entry pattern and cross-referencing with the security footage, it's clearly Kyle using this code. A quick check confirms 5953 spells KYLE on a phone keypad. Eliza had created a code for him without my knowledge or permission. I immediately revoke all access codes except my own. Change the alarm codes too. Then I send Eliza one text with a single frame from the security footage showing Kyle entering my house, timestamped from 3 weeks ago when I was at a conference in Denver. Her response is immediate. "I can explain." I don't reply. Instead, I compose an email to her boss. Since we had a professional relationship through the security system I'd installed for their company, I politely inform him that I'm designating a different account manager from my team to handle their service needs going forward, citing a personal conflict of interest. I assure him there will be no disruption in service. I copy my company's operations director on the email, making it a formal business communication rather than something personal. Then I text my property manager, Mark, who's a close friend from college. 3 months ago, I'd purchased a condo in a building downtown as an investment property. It was a coincidence that it happened to be in Eliza's building. The opportunity came through a business contact, and the numbers made sense. I'd mentioned owning a rental property to Eliza but never specified where, and she never asked for details. The unit I bought was on the same floor as hers, but down the hall, Unit 3F, while she was in 3B. Hey Mark, tenant in 3F at Parkview mentioned water damage in the bathroom ceiling. Can you check it out when you get a chance? Might be a pipe issue affecting other units too. The tenant had actually reported this issue a week earlier, and I'd asked Mark to schedule a plumber, but the tenant's travel schedule had delayed the inspection. Now seemed like a good time to follow up. Mark replies quickly, "No problem. Plumber is scheduled for tomorrow morning. I'll let the building management know we need to check adjacent units too, as a precaution." I go to sleep surprisingly peacefully. The next morning, Eliza has sent 27 texts and left 13 voicemails. I read and listened to none of them. Instead, I call Tom, who's bewildered by last night's events. "Dude, after you left, it was super awkward. Kyle tried to act like everything was normal, but everyone was uncomfortable. Eliza kept checking her phone, then she and Kyle left together about 20 minutes later." "They went to her place," I say, not asking. "Probably. What are you gonna do?" "Already doing it." I explain about the security footage, and he whistles. "Cold, man, but deserved." "That's not all," I say, and tell him about the apartment. "Wait, you own a unit in her building? She doesn't know?" "I bought it as an investment 3 months ago. Good location, below market value. She knows I own rental property but never asked for specifics, and now there's legitimately a plumbing issue that needs investigation." 3 days after the birthday dinner, it happens. My phone rings. "Eliza." I let it go to voicemail. Then again, and again. I'm in a meeting with a client when the texts start. "What did you do?" "There's water everywhere. The plumber says it's coming from the unit down the hall. The whole bathroom ceiling collapsed. Please call me back." What actually happened was more complicated than I expected. The plumber discovered a slow leak in the shared wall between units 3F and 3B, my rental and Eliza's apartment. The pipe had been leaking for months, causing hidden damage. When they opened the wall to investigate, the accumulated water suddenly released, causing significant damage to both units. The building's maintenance supervisor declared both apartments temporarily uninhabitable until repairs could be completed. Estimated time? 3 to 4 weeks. I didn't cause the leak. It was a genuine maintenance issue that would have been discovered eventually, but the timing was impeccable. She calls again that evening, and I finally answer. "Where am I supposed to go?" she demands, skipping any greeting. "I hear Kyle has a nice place," I reply calmly. "You know about everything?" "Yes, security cameras, Eliza. Did you really think I wouldn't notice you bringing him into my house while I was away?" Silence then. "I was going to tell you." "When? After my birthday, when you made me sit there while he gave you flowers? Or maybe after I found his access code in my security system?" 5953. "Really?" More silence. "Look," I continue, "what you do now isn't my concern. We're done. I've already packed up your things from my house. They're in a box in my garage. Let me know when you want to pick them up, and I'll make sure they're left outside for you." "You can't just..." "I already did." "Oh, and you no longer have access to any of my company's marketing accounts. I've informed your boss." "You're ruining my life over one mistake," she cries. "One mistake? You've been sleeping with him in my house for months. That's not a mistake, that's a campaign." "Fine," she snaps. "You know what? Kyle and I belonged together anyway. He never stopped loving me." "Great. Congratulations. I'm sure you'll be very happy together." I hang up, block her number, and pour myself a drink. Happy birthday to me. 2 weeks later, I'm at a coffee shop when Tom texts me. "You see Instagram lately?" I hadn't. I check and find Kyle has posted photos of a weekend getaway with a woman who isn't Eliza. The caption, "Weekend escape with my favorite person. #no filter, #just happy." I almost feel bad for Eliza. Almost. A week after that, I run into our mutual friend Sarah at a brewery. She fills me in on what I've missed. Eliza had moved in with Kyle after her apartment flooded, assuming they were finally official. 3 days later, his ex came back into the picture. He asked Eliza to leave. She's now staying at an extended stay hotel that's eating up most of her paycheck. She really messed up, Sarah says. She had a good thing with you. Water under the bridge, I reply, an unintentional pun that makes me smile. For what it's worth, I told her she was being stupid. Kyle was always a player. I shrug. Not my problem anymore. And it wasn't. I felt no anger, no desire for further revenge. The universe had handled it perfectly. 6 months later, my security business continues to thrive. I've hired a new technician and expanded our service offerings. I'm dating casually, nothing serious. My house is peaceful. I received one last email from Eliza about a month ago. Her apartment repairs were finally complete. She'd moved back in and found one of my sweatshirts in the back of her closet. Did I want it back? I replied with the address of a local donation center. Sometimes the best revenge isn't some complicated scheme. It's just standing up for yourself, walking away with dignity, and letting natural consequences unfold. And sometimes, birthday wishes do come true. My fiancée texted, I'm staying at my ex's for a few days to clear my head. Don't make it weird, I replied. Take all the time you need. Then sent her bags to her mom's and disconnected her phone line, which I paid for. 4 days later, she showed up to our building with her bags. The doorman told her she didn't live there anymore. She's been calling me from her mom's phone, begging me to just talk. I always thought I'd be the last guy to write one of these posts. Guess life has a way of surprising you. 2 weeks ago, my fiancée Melody sent me a text that changed everything. I'm staying at Dominic's for a few days to clear my head. Don't make it weird. Dominic, her ex from college. The one she assured me was ancient history when I found their text conversations 6 months into our relationship. The one who still commented on every single one of her Instagram posts. The one who, coincidentally, showed up at the same industry conference as her last year. I stared at that message for a full 5 minutes. 3 years together, engaged for 8 months, wedding venue deposits paid, and she was clearing her head at her ex's place. I replied with just 5 words, take all the time you need. Then I got to work. First thing to understand, I'm a systems analyst. My job is identifying vulnerabilities, planning for contingencies, and implementing solutions. I don't do emotional outbursts, I do strategic responses. Second thing, we weren't just romantically entangled. We were financially and logistically intertwined in ways Melody had apparently never fully considered. Within 24 hours, I had 1. Contacted our building management to remove her from the authorized residence list. The lease was in my name. She'd never gotten around to signing the addendum despite living there for nearly 2 years. 2. Suspended her access fob to the building's gym, pool, and parking garage, all under my membership. 3. Canceled the additional line on my phone plan, her phone, which I had been paying for since hers got damaged 6 months ago. 4. Transferred her portion of our joint savings back to her personal account. We had maintained separate personal accounts alongside our joint one for exactly this kind of contingency. 5. Packed her personal belongings, clothes, jewelry, makeup, electronics that were exclusively hers, and had them couriered to her mother's house with a simple note. These belong to Melody. Please ensure she receives them. 6. Notified our wedding venue, photographer, caterer, and other vendors of a postponement. They all had cancellation clauses that I had insisted on, another system analyst habit. I didn't rage, didn't send accusatory texts, didn't blow up her phone demanding explanations. Just methodically disconnected our lives. Her mother called the next day, confused. Melody's things just arrived here. Is everything okay? Melody decided to stay at her ex-boyfriend's place to clear her head, I explained calmly. I'm helping her clear it further by giving her space. She can reach me through you if needed, since her phone might not be working. Silence then. She did what? Apparently, Melody hadn't informed her family about this little arrangement. Interesting. 4 days later, as I was working from home, I got a call from the building's doorman, Marcus. Sir, there's a Melody Winters here, insisting she lives in your unit. She's not on the resident list anymore, and her access card isn't working. Protocol is to check with the unit holder. Thank you, Marcus. Miss Winters no longer resides here. Please do not allow her up. Understood, sir. 20 minutes later, my work phone started ringing. Calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I let them go to voicemail. The first one was Melody, voice cracking. What the hell, James? I came home and they wouldn't let me in. My key doesn't work and my phone's disconnected. Call me back immediately. I didn't. The second voicemail. This isn't funny anymore. Where's all my stuff? Why can't I get into our apartment? The third, from her mother's number. James, please. I made a mistake. Can we please just talk about this? It wasn't what you think. Please call me back. I finished my workday, went to the gym in our building, the membership she no longer had access to, and made myself a quiet dinner. Then I sent one text to her mother's phone. Melody, I'm acknowledging receipt of your calls. To be perfectly clear, there is no our apartment. The lease has only my name on it. There is no our phone plan. I canceled the additional line I was paying for. There is no our wedding. I've postponed everything. You chose to stay with your ex to clear your head. Consider it cleared along with your belongings, which were delivered to your mother's house 4 days ago. If there are items missing, provide a list and I'll check if they're here. That opened the floodgates. Calls from her friends, her sister, eventually her father, a man I respected who sounded exhausted. James, can I come by tomorrow to talk? Just me. I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop instead. When we sat down, he looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite place. Melody claims you overreacted, he began. Says she was just friends with this Dominic guy and needed space to think about the wedding. I nodded, then placed my phone on the table between us. I don't typically record conversations, but I started keeping receipts when things felt off. I played the audio from 3 weeks earlier. Melody on a call she thought I couldn't hear. I don't know, Dom. Yes, we're still engaged. No, I haven't told him yet. It's complicated. I need more time. The wedding's already paid for. I'll figure it out. Her father's face fell. There's more, I said, but I think that covers the basics. He rubbed his eyes. Her mother and I raised her better than this. I believe that too. We sat in silence for a moment before he spoke again. What happens now? Now? Nothing. It's done. The relationship ended the moment she decided to stay with her ex. Everything else was just paperwork. It's been 10 days since that coffee meeting. In that time, Melody's narrative has evolved dramatically. First version, she just needed space, I maliciously locked her out and stole her things. Second version, she was confused about the wedding. Dominic was just a friend offering perspective. Third version, I was controlling and suspicious. She turned to an old friend for support. Current version, she made one mistake and I'm punishing her disproportionately. None acknowledged the phone conversation I recorded, the fact that she took an overnight bag to her ex's, or that she didn't call me once during those 4 days until she found herself locked out. The final twist came yesterday. Dominic's girlfriend, yes, apparently he has one, sent me a message on Instagram. He had told her he was helping a friend through pre-wedding jitters. She found texts on his phone suggesting considerably more than friendly support. Now she's out of his apartment too. So here we are. 2 women who thought they were in committed relationships, both locked out of apartments they never put their names on, both discovering what happens when you build your living situation on assumptions rather than agreements. I've blocked Melody everywhere except email, which I've filtered to a folder I check once weekly. Her things remain with her mother. The wedding deposits are mostly refundable, and I'll return her portion once everything's settled. Am I cold for handling it this way? Maybe. But you know what's colder? Texting your fiancé that you're staying at your ex's place like you're announcing a trip to the grocery store. Some people need dramatic confrontations and tearful closure conversations. I just need clean systems and clear boundaries. She sent a text. I took it at face value. End of story. Update 3 weeks later. First, thank you for all the comments and messages. I read every one, even if I couldn't respond to all of them. Quick updates since many asked. The ring situation. Yes, I got it back. Indirectly. After her father and I had coffee, he returned to their family home and apparently had a long conversation with Melody and her mother. The next day, a small package arrived by courier containing the engagement ring, which belonged to my grandmother, and a handwritten note from her father simply saying, "This should be returned to your family." Class act, that man. Legal questions. Several people warned me about tenant rights, since Melody had lived in the apartment for nearly 2 years. I'd already consulted with a lawyer before making any moves. In our state, without her name on the lease and without proof of paying rent directly to the landlord, her legal claim was minimal. Still, I I documented everything and kept all text exchanges in case it became an issue. It hasn't. The recording. A few commented that recording her call might be illegal depending on state. To clarify, our apartment has thin walls, and I overheard her conversation from the hallway when I came home early from a work event. I made a note of what was said immediately afterward. Habit from my job. Documenting system vulnerabilities. Not an actual audio recording, just my detailed notes of what I heard. Sorry for the confusion. Melody's living situation. According to mutual friends who have mostly sided with me after learning the full story, she's still at her parents' house. Dominic apparently tried to reconcile with his girlfriend rather than offer Melody a place to stay. Interesting how quickly priorities change when consequences appear. Wedding fallout. The venue was surprisingly understanding. Apparently they've seen this scenario before. Most vendors return deposits minus reasonable administrative fees. I've calculated Melody's portion of these refunds and will transfer the amount to her personal account once all refunds have processed. Business is business. The most unexpected development. Melody's younger sister reached out to apologize for her initial angry calls. Said after learning everything, she was embarrassed by her sister's behavior and wanted me to know not everyone in their family condones what happened. We had a good relationship. I appreciated the gesture. Many have asked if I've spoken directly to Melody since everything went down. The answer is no. Her weekly emails have evolved from angry, "You had no right," to bargaining, "We can work through this," to reflective, "I understand why you're hurt," to apologetic, "I made the biggest mistake of my life." I read them but haven't responded. What would be the point? Her most recent message included, "I never actually did anything with Dominic. I just needed to figure out if what we had was real or if I still had feelings for him." Even if that's true, and I have my doubts, who texts their fiancé that they're staying at an ex's place to clear their head? That alone was the deal breaker. The rest was just executing the necessary system updates after a critical failure. Edit. Just logged in to find hundreds of new comments and messages. Thanks for the overwhelming support. A few clarifications. To those calling me cold or robotic. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Melody showed me exactly who she was with that text. Everything after was just processing the information efficiently. On whether I ever suspected before. There were small indicators. Her password-protected second Instagram account I glimpsed once, unexplained gaps in her whereabouts, the way her expression changed when his name came up. But nothing concrete until that overheard call 3 weeks before her text. I'm not naturally suspicious. I'm naturally observant. Different thing. Regarding her belongings, I've been accused of stealing or holding hostage her things. To be crystal clear, everything identifiably hers was packed carefully, inventoried, and delivered to her family home. Shared items and gifts remain where they are. She's welcome to provide a list of anything she believes is missing, and I'll address each item reasonably. For those asking why I didn't fight for the relationship, what exactly would I be fighting for? The privilege of wondering where my wife is whenever she needs to clear her head. A lifetime of checking her phone when she's in the shower? That's not a relationship. That's surveillance. Several people have messaged asking if I regret throwing away years over one mistake. But it wasn't one mistake. The mistake was sending the text. The decision was choosing to go to her ex's place. The betrayal was whatever happened there. The character flaw was thinking this was somehow acceptable behavior in an engagement. I don't view this as revenge. I view it as a rational response to new information. System analysts don't do revenge, we do solutions. My girlfriend demanded I apologize to her male best friend for hurting his feelings. I agreed. I went to his house and said in front of his wife, "I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I didn't tell my girlfriend about the affair you had last summer. I should have never kept that secret for you." My girlfriend, Kate, has a best friend named Simon. Their relationship is the stuff of legends. A 2-person fan club where they are the sole members and the only topic of discussion is their own shared magnificence. Simon is married to a lovely, quiet woman named Clara, who always seems to be observing their dynamic with the weary resignation of a zookeeper watching 2 monkeys fling insults at each other and call it bonding. I've always been the third wheel in my own relationship. Simon's opinion is sought on every decision, from the brand of coffee we buy to the destination of our vacations. He has a key to our apartment, a privilege Kate insisted on for emergencies, and has a habit of walking in unannounced. He's arrogant, condescending, and possesses a unique talent for phrasing insults as friendly advice. Kate, in turn, defends his every transgression with a breathless admiration that is both baffling and deeply irritating. Last summer, I became the keeper of a secret that changed the entire dynamic of this little triangle. Kate had forced me to go out for a boys' night with Simon, an excruciating experience I was meant to enjoy. After several expensive cocktails that I paid for, Simon, in a moment of drunken, arrogant confession, told me he was having an affair. He laughed about it, bragging about the thrill of the deception. He saw me as a harmless, simple guy, Kate's quiet, stable boyfriend, a living piece of furniture to whom he could confess his sins without consequence. The next morning, a panicked, hungover Simon called me, begging me to forget everything he'd said. He made me promise not to tell a soul, especially not Kate or his wife. I agreed. It wasn't my place to detonate his life. But I am a man who believes in the principle of mutually assured destruction. I didn't see the information as a burden. I saw it as a key, saved for a door I hoped I would never have to unlock. The door presented itself last Tuesday. I had committed a cardinal sin. I had hurt Simon's feelings. The crime? I had politely asked him to please text before using his key to enter our apartment, as he had walked in on me in a towel the day before. The fallout was biblical. Kate accused me of being a jealous, insecure man who was trying to sabotage her most important friendship. Simon played the part of the wounded artist, telling her he felt unwelcome and judged in our home. This culminated in a dramatic, tearful confrontation last night. Kate and Simon, the united front of manufactured victimhood, sat me down for an intervention. "You owe him an apology, Mark," Kate said, her arms crossed. "A real, sincere apology. You made him feel like an intruder in his own best friend's life." I just looked at them. The sheer theatrical absurdity of it all was almost beautiful. "Fine," I said, my voice a mask of weary resignation. But a simple, "I'm sorry" was not enough. Kate wanted a grand gesture of submission. "No, not here," she insisted. "You need to go to his house. You need to apologize to him in his own home, in front of his wife, so Clara knows that you understand and respect the bond that we all share." She wanted an audience. She wanted me to be humiliated in front of another woman, to solidify my status as the beta in their little pack. A slow, dangerous smile spread across my face. It was the most perfect, most beautifully ironic trap anyone had ever laid for me. She had just handed me the key, the audience, and the stage. "Okay," I said, my voice full of a fake, defeated sincerity. "I agree. I'll go to his house and apologize. It's the right thing to do." Kate's face flooded with triumphant relief. Simon smirked, victorious. They thought they were about to witness my surrender. They had no idea they were about to be the star witnesses at a public execution. Update 1. The apology was scheduled for Saturday evening. Kate spent the 2 days leading up to it, coaching me on what to say. It was a masterclass in self-absorbed nonsense. I was to acknowledge my insecurity, praise Simon's unwavering support for our relationship, and promise to be more open and trusting in the future. I just nodded along, absorbing my lines like a method actor preparing for a role. On Saturday, I made one crucial phone call before we left. I called Clara, Simon's wife. "Hi, Clara, it's Mark," I said, my voice full of a friendly, manufactured warmth. "Just wanted to confirm we're still good to pop by around 7. I really want to clear the air with Simon and make sure we're all on the same page. It's so important to me that we're all one big, happy family." Clara, a genuinely kind person, sounded pleased. "Of course, Mark, we'll see you then." My audience was now confirmed. We arrived at their house at 7 o'clock sharp. Kate was practically vibrating with smug satisfaction. She was about to see me humbled. Simon opened the door, his expression one of magnanimous forgiveness. He was ready to graciously accept my groveling. Clara welcomed us in, offering us drinks, completely oblivious to the drama she was about to be a part of. We all sat down in their living room. The atmosphere was thick with a tense, expectant silence. Kate looked at me and gave me a sharp, commanding nod. It was time for the performance to begin. I stood up and faced Simon. I took a deep, theatrical breath. "Simon," I began, my voice full of a carefully crafted sincerity. "We're here because I owe you an apology. I have been selfish, and I have not been a good friend to you." Kate was beaming. Simon was puffing out his chest. This was even better than they had imagined. "You have been a constant presence in our lives," I continued, turning to include Clara in my audience. "And I have not always appreciated the closeness of your bond with Kate. For that, I am truly sorry." I walked to the center of the room, right in front of the fireplace. And then I did it. I got down on one knee. Kate gasped, a little thrill of victory running through her. This was the ultimate submission. I looked up, not at Simon, but at his wife. I looked directly into Clara's kind, unsuspecting eyes. "Clara," I said, my voice now ringing with a clear, powerful sincerity. "My real apology is to you, because the biggest secret I have kept, the biggest wrong I have committed, was against you." Clara's smile faltered, replaced by a look of utter confusion. Simon's face went rigid. Kate looked like she had just been slapped. "I'm so sorry, Clara," I said, my voice full of a sudden, raw emotion. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the affair Simon had last summer with the woman from his marketing department. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the hotel rooms he paid for in cash, or the secret email account he bragged to me about. He told me everything, one night when he was drunk, and he made me promise to keep his secret. And I did. I should have never kept that secret for you. That was my failure as a friend, and I am begging for your forgiveness." The silence that followed was the most profound, most absolute silence I have ever experienced. It was the sound of a bomb detonating in a soundproof room. Clara just stared at me, her face a blank canvas of shock. Then slowly, she turned her head and looked at her husband. Simon was the color of chalk, his eyes wide with a primal terror. Kate was the first to break. "What are you doing?" she shrieked, jumping to her feet. "He's lying. He's making this up to get back at me." I didn't even look at her. I remained on one knee, my eyes locked on Clara. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I brought up a single screenshot and held it out for Clara to see. It was from the night of Simon's drunken confession. After he had called me the next morning, begging me to keep his secret, I had sent him a single text to create a digital record. The text said, "I won't say anything about what you told me about your affair. But you owe me one." His reply was simple and damning. "Thank you, man. I swear it's over. Don't ever mention it again." Clara looked at the screenshot. She looked at her husband's name on the screen. And in that moment, she knew it was the truth. I stood up. I looked at the wreckage I had created. Kate was screaming at me. Simon was stammering, trying to form a denial that he knew would never work. And Clara just sat there, a single silent tear rolling down her cheek. "My apology is delivered," I said quietly. Then I turned, walked out of the house, and closed the door on the explosion. Update 2. The immediate aftermath of my apology was a chaotic multi-front war, waged entirely over text messages and voicemails. I drove home, blocked Kate's and Simon's numbers preemptively, and settled in to watch the fallout from a safe distance. The first wave came from Kate's friends, the ones she had undoubtedly called hysterical from Simon's driveway. The texts were a predictable mix of outrage and confusion. "What you did was sick, Mark. Why would you lie like that?" I replied to each one with the same simple, devastating message, the screenshot of my text exchange with Simon. I added no commentary. I just sent the image. The angry text stopped immediately, replaced by a deafening silence. The truth, it seems, is a very effective conversation ender. The second wave came from Kate herself, via a series of frantic emails. The tone shifted with each message, moving through the 5 stages of grief for her relationship. First, denial. "You are a manipulative liar, and I will never forgive you for making up such a horrible story." Then anger. "I hope you're happy. You've ruined everything." Then bargaining. "If you just admit you are lying, maybe we can fix this." Then depression. "I can't believe this is happening." And finally, a strange, twisted form of acceptance. "Okay, fine. Maybe Simon made a mistake, but you didn't have to blow up his life to get back at me." I didn't reply to any of them. The real story, the one that mattered, came from an unexpected source. 2 days after the incident, I received an email from Clara, Simon's wife. It was short, but it told me everything I needed to know. "Mark," it began, "I don't know whether to thank you or to hate you, but you told me the truth, and that's more than my own husband has done in a year. I found the secret credit card statements. It was all true. He's not living here anymore. I've contacted a lawyer. I just wanted you to know that, and I'm sorry for what Kate and Simon put you through. You deserve better." That email was my vindication. I hadn't just gotten revenge. I had performed a necessary, albeit brutal, act of truth-telling. With the moral high ground firmly established, it was time to deal with the logistical fallout. Kate was still living in my apartment. I had my lawyer draft a formal eviction notice, giving her the legally required 30 days to vacate the premises. She had no legal standing. The lease was solely in my name, but I wanted the process to be clean and official. She responded by trying to turn the apartment into a war zone. She would play loud music at all hours. She would leave passive-aggressive notes on the counter. It was childish and pathetic. I simply ignored it. I started staying at a friend's house, leaving her to stew in the toxic environment she had created. Her final, desperate move was to try and steal from me. The day before she was due to move out, I came by the apartment with a friend to make sure she was packing. I found her trying to load my expensive television and sound system into her car. I didn't yell. I just stood there, my arms crossed, and said, "That's not yours, Kate." "I paid for half of it," she shrieked. "No, you didn't," I said calmly. "I have the credit card statement that shows I paid for it in full. Put it back, or I will call the police and show them the receipt, and we can add attempted theft to the list of your recent accomplishments." Defeated, she put the television back. The next day, she was gone. I walked into my apartment, and for the first time in years, it was quiet. It was peaceful. It was mine. Final update. It has been 6 months since I got on one knee and apologized. The dust has completely settled, and the new landscape of my life is better than I could have ever imagined. The consequences for Kate and Simon, however, have been total and irreversible. Let's start with Simon. His life is a smoldering ruin. Clara, armed with the knowledge of his affair and the proof of his financial deception, the secret credit card, was ruthless in the divorce. She got the house, a significant portion of his assets, and primary custody of their dog. Simon is now living in a small, rented condo, paying alimony, and is, by all accounts, miserable. His reputation in their social circle is destroyed. He is no longer the witty, charming center of attention. He is the disgraced cheater who got publicly exposed. Now for Kate. Her life has been a slow, painful collapse. After being forced to move out of my apartment, she tried to lean on her best friend Simon for support. But Simon, embroiled in his own catastrophic divorce, had no time or energy for her drama. Their legendary friendship, which was built on a foundation of mutual admiration and a shared contempt for me, did not survive the harsh light of reality. They reportedly had a massive falling out, each blaming the other for the destruction of their lives. With no fiancé, no best friend, and no home, Kate was forced to move back in with her parents. Her attempts to spin the story and paint me as the villain failed spectacularly. The screenshot of Simon's text was undeniable proof that I hadn't lied. She was exposed as a woman who had not only enabled her best friend's affair, but had demanded I apologize for challenging his disrespect. She lost all credibility. The last I heard, she is still living with her parents, working a low-level marketing job, her glamorous city life a distant memory. She tried to get revenge on me for a perceived slight, and in doing so, she lost everything. As for me, I am thriving. The first thing I did after reclaiming my apartment was to change the locks. It was a symbolic act. I was securing my space, creating a boundary that would never be violated again. I've been focusing on my work, and the peace and quiet in my personal life has allowed me to be more creative and productive than ever. I also reconnected with Clara. A few months after the incident, she reached out to thank me again. We met for coffee, just as friends. We had something profound in common. We had both been betrayed by the same two people. We talked for hours. It was easy and honest. That coffee turned into dinner a week later, and that dinner has turned into something more. It's new, it's tentative, but it's real. It's built on a foundation of shared experience and brutal honesty. We both know what it's like to be lied to, and we have no interest in ever doing it to each other. Kate demanded I get on my knees and beg. She wanted a spectacle of my submission. She got her spectacle, but it was one of her own public humiliation. She thought she was the director of the play, but she never realized I was the one who had written the final act. She wanted me to apologize for hurting her best friend's feelings. Instead, I apologized for keeping his secrets. And in doing so, I set two people free. Clara and myself.